Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm Claire Jones. If we haven't already met, I'm an author and small publisher committed to changing the world for the better through inclusive stories and practices. And we are jumping on today for my Authorvision Facebook Live series where I interview the amazing and inspiring authors in my network to discuss the personal visions that have shaped our lives and careers. So if you're joining us, please like, comment, share below. Let us know that you're here. And today I'm talking to Coleen. Yay, so glad to have you here today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we are well integrated into the Seattle networking network, and I think that that's just our audience at this point.
That's a great audience. There's no problem with that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, tell me about your backstory. Let's dive right in. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, it's been a journey. I guess for a lot of people it usually is, but for me, I was born and raised in Hawaii, and I loved it, as I guess most people would, but it's like anything else, right? It was home. Yes, it's beautiful. Yes, it's paradise, but it was what I was used to do as my home. So when I turned 18, I realized I want to do something different. I want to see something different. So I went to college in Washington State. So I got all the four seasons, and which was awesome.
Yeah.
And then culturally it was different as well. Which is awesome. It kind of opens your mind to different perspectives, different ways of living, which I think we all need to experience to know what we have and to really appreciate what we have. So I was there for 4 years, went back to Hawaii for 5, and then realized that I really wanted to do more than what I was capable of doing in my small little island that I lived on. So I moved to California. Went through some series of interesting things. I mean, it was, again, a culture shift for me, coming from a small island where it's, people are friendly, it's trustworthy. I mean, I trusted everybody. That's just the space. Somebody told me the world was flat, I probably would have believed them. Because just that basis of trust, right? And then I moved to San Francisco, and I truly was not prepared for that. I went, wow, it's a beautiful city, but it's a city with all different types of people. And here I was being friendly and trusting to everybody and realizing that's not always accepting from everybody else. So that was in itself a learning experience. So while I was in California, I got married. I had my girls, and that experience in and of itself, and I write about that in my book, it was a turning point for me. What I mean by that is when you think about relationships, you think about relationships truly stem from how you feel about yourself, self-worth, your self-confidence. And when I look back at the relationships I had in my life, I love people. I was always a people pleaser. I wanted to do the best for everybody in my life. I always put myself last, but I also didn't think highly of myself. So that really resonated with the kind of relationships I had. So my first marriage was one of abuse, was one of it was very difficult. I didn't think highly of myself. I didn't feel like I was worthy of anything different. So I endured. And when you meet a lot of women, I've met a lot of women who were in similar situations, it's difficult because you are such great people. I mean, you have a big heart. You want to do the best for your family. You want to do the best for the world. But sometimes because you put yourself last and feel you're not worthy, you don't put your best foot forward. That's what I did. So for 20 years, I endured, I struggled, but then when I look at that experience as well, there was a lot of struggling, a lot of, poor self-confidence, didn't have a voice. When I was in my 20s, I felt I had larger than life opinions about stuff.
Don't we all at that age?
Right? I was out there telling the world what I thought, whether they wanted to listen or not. But going through that journey of being in a difficult or abusive relationship, I lost that voice. And when I came out of that relationship, and again, it took me a long time to realize that I deserved more. I deserved better. Not only I deserve better, but my girls deserve better. But so once I was out of that relationship, I realized, wow, where did my voice go? Where did my opinions go? And not only did that impact my life, but it impacted my corporate life. I was in the corporate world for 25 years. And while I could do my job, I didn't give it my all because I didn't feel like I was my all. So when I look at my progression in my career, I could have probably progressed a lot further if I felt better about who I was.
Yeah.
And felt comfortable having that voice, right?
Yeah.
Getting out of so fast forward, getting out of my divorce, starting a healing journey, which took me a long time to heal. I really felt that I was like a Humpty Dumpty. I was putting all these pieces back that I didn't know where they went anymore. This person was not who I knew anymore. So how do I put these pieces? How do I become a whole person again? So it took a long time to have that happen. So once I was able to put that person back together, I realized that, wow, this person is not somebody who wants to do this job anymore. I'm in this career. I did it for the right reasons, to support my girls, because my ex-husband didn't work. So I was the sole breadwinner. I needed to take care of them. So the liking the job or wanting to grow was not important. It was just surviving, right? Being in that survival mode. So once I was able to realize that I've got this person that I like now, I love this person. Finally, I've gotten this person that I really enjoy. What do I want to do next? Do I want to stay in this career, or what was I really called to do? So I went on this journey of self-discovery. Well, what do I want to do with my life? I was called to do something different, but what is it? So I remember, taking classes and doing all of these, reading books. I'm also a lifelong learner, so I love to read. I love to go.
Right.
Yeah. So then I realized, okay, I know I was put in here to do something different. So I'm doing these graphs, and it was really funny because my current husband walks in and he goes, you ever thought of being a life coach? And I thought, how do you know what a life coach is? He's not a person that would go to a life coach. Let's face it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that might be a good thing for you. You might want to check it out. So anyway, long story short, I checked it out. I became a certified life coach. And then I wanted to work with women who were struggling in their relationships, given my own history.
Yeah.
And I realized during that journey of becoming a coach, I really wanted to share my story with others. And to be honest with you, the first time I shared my story was the most difficult thing to do. Because a lot of women who have been in abusive situations or their sense of self has been, completely diminished, it's really hard to share your story. You feel like you're going to be judged. You feel like people are going to ask you, what the heck was wrong with you? Like, really? I mean, why did you stay? Because I got that a lot. Why did you stay? Well, women who have been in those situations, it's just not a simple, yes, I'm walking out the door tomorrow scenario. They need help. They need guidance. They need support. And for many of us who have gone through that, you don't always get that support. You tend to, and I know I did this for myself. I pushed people away because I didn't want them to know what was happening. The image of myself, even though I didn't think highly of myself, but I had this image about, being in the workforce, being responsible, being, whatever I thought I was. I didn't want that to be diminished by people truly knowing what was really happening in my home. So once I was able to open the door and share my story, and that's what my book gave me. My book was really a therapeutic in some respects because it allowed me to open up. It allowed me to share. And I remember writing that first chapter. I was like, ooh, I don't know if I want to state this. I really want to share this with the world.
Yeah.
It's 2 pages, actually. I started writing about my background. I'm like, oh God, this is too much. I don't know if I could share this. But, it really was a release. It really was therapeutic because I kept writing and I kept writing. Before I knew it, I had this book. Wow, I really shared my whole heart. I shared my whole self. And when I did that, I realized, wow, there might be other people out there. If I can just impact one person, if I could tell one person who can maybe, feel confident to do something different, feel confident to walk out that door. If I can give that person a little bit of that confidence, then I felt that I made that impact that I was looking for. So that's what prompted me to write the book, prompted me to share stories from some other friends that I had. And it really showed me how truly resilient we as women are. We can go through so many hurdles in our lives that we don't give ourselves credit for, we find solutions. We find a way to thrive. And that's really my message was, this is your way to thrive. We all have that capability to do that.
I mean, man, can I relate to so much in your story? Like every step along the way, like I'm a child of divorce. Both of my parents have been married 3 times. And so I saw very early on this type of struggle that you're talking about, but that didn't helped me avoid the same cycles too later on, because like calls to like you said, is that you attract the relationships that are reflections of your inner opinions of yourself, right? And so I ended up in an abusive relationship a few years ago, and you're right, like when you're coming out of it, you are boiled down to like the most vulnerable baby self that you have, because they've stripped everything else away from you. Like, are you familiar with the Harry Potter movies?
Yes. Oh, I love them. I have to admit, I'm a fan.
Yeah. Do you know that scene where that piece of Voldemort is in the train station underneath the bench? Like, that's what I felt like coming out of the relationship. Like, I was just bare, vulnerable, like just a baby. And you're right, it does take time to build yourself back up after that as well. I mean, it's practice. That's really what we're talking about here at the end of the day, is practice. Like, you have to practice being vulnerable about your story. You have to practice about doing something about your story. You have to practice every single day to make that forward momentum that you're looking for.
Absolutely. And you're right. It takes practice. And that's what it absolutely is. Practice. And before you know it, you live your story, you see the difference in yourself. I mean, it's funny because when I look at back at when I coach other people, I actually help myself in the process too. And it's funny how you grow when other people in your lives grow. When you're able to share your story, you're able to see the changes happening. You're able to see people actually make a difference in their lives based on what you've said. And you go, wow, then you see all the transformations that can happen and how real they are. And again, seeing how we as women don't give ourselves enough credit for how strong we are, how capable we are. We get, like when I was growing up a lot, and not to say it was just the timing, it was just the generational thing, but women are taught not to speak, you don't give your opinion, you kind of stay in the background. You're there to help and to serve, which is, part of who I still am. But at the end of the day, we are people who have thoughts and feelings, and we should be sharing them with everyone, showing our capabilities, showing how we can share and we can help others and we can thrive because of it. So that's the message that I wanted to, share with others, is that, and then again, it's a transition. Like, we go through transitions in our lives. And that's what I talk about in my book. We start off, I talk about my story as a young person, the things that I've gone through. And then, you get married, you have children, you get your career. And then, we become caregivers of our parents and our children, and how that, also molds us and shows what we're like. And then, those types of things, when we actually retire, if we decide to, or we decide to do something different. But all of those transitions are what makes us who we are. And all of those transitions show how strong and capable we are as women, and all of the things we've done. And when you look back at your life, I hope to, when I'm 90 years old or something,
Yeah.
say, wow, I did all of that. And because you don't think about that when you're going through the process. You think, okay, this is something I have to do. I'm just going to continue riding my horse and doing whatever I got to do. But when you look back and you go, wow, that is just amazing. Your life story is just amazing. So,
yeah. I mean, what kept you going through all of this? Like, what were the personal visions that kept you going?
I think it was really, when I think about when I was in my relationship, I kind of define it and we're in blinders. I went into survival mode when I was going through my first marriage. Not that it served me in a sense, because I didn't know what to do. I was overwhelmed, emotionally, physically, just overwhelmed. I didn't know what else to do. Now, again, that may not have been the right recourse, but at the time I was so overwhelmed, I just put blinders on just to survive each day. I got up in the morning, went to work, took care of my girls, whatever I needed to do just to survive. Now, also walking on eggshells, that was a survival mode as well. But when I look back, and I think to myself, well, geez, I wish I could have done something different. Wish I could have been stronger, because you want to self-analyze everything, or at least I would self-analyze. Why couldn't I have done this differently? But then I realize you do the best you can in the circumstances that you're in. And that's all you can do. You do the best. And if this is the person I had to be able to survive the day, to be able to take care of my girls, that's who I had to be. And now, was that the person I would have wanted to be? No, but I knew that that was the best I could do in that situation, in the
Mhm.
circumstance. So, when I talk to other women and they're like, well, geez, I wish I hadn't done that. You did the best you could.
Yeah. The
God,
past is the past.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we can't rewrite it. Like, we just have to do what we can with what we have.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And give ourselves grace. A lot of times we don't give ourselves enough grace.
Absolutely.
We're the worst critics, right? I mean, you think
Totally.
times I wouldn't talk to somebody else the way I talk to myself, the way
Mhm.
why did you do that? Why did you say that? Why did you do that differently? But you got to give yourself grace too, like you would anybody else, because we're just human beings trying to survive,
Mhm.
trying to do the best we can under very difficult circumstances. So you give yourself grace to know, and it took me a long time to realize that. I
Yeah.
went through a lot of guilt, a lot of anger, a lot of remorse. I mean, just a lot of those feelings. I lived with those feelings for a long time,
Mhm.
especially in my healing journey. And then I realized, you know what, I've got to give myself grace too, to say, I did the best I could. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to what I would have loved it to be, but it was the best I could do at the time.
Mhm.
Of grace, and then it allows you to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go through those emotions too. You can't just ignore them. You have to process them in some shape or form. I mean, the
Right.
danger is staying in those emotions, obviously, but like I had to have one of my therapists. I had two therapists at the same time for a good portion of this relationship that I was going through. And one of them, all she did was get mad with me. That was the extent of our sessions together, was her just getting mad with me. And I was like, this is what I need. Like, I just need someone to like validate my anger, sit in my anger with me and be like, yes, it's okay to be angry about this situation, but let's do something about it instead of just stay in it all the time. But sometimes you just need someone to be angry with you.
That's exactly it. You need that support, because you can't move forward unless you, like you're saying, validate that feeling, right? And
Absolutely.
know that you have somebody there to support you through that feeling. Because if you don't
Mhm.
feel it and validate it, you truly cannot move forward. Because
Mhm.
then just glaze over it. I was into denial a lot of times. And when you deny it, you're not dealing with it. You cannot move forward until you deal with those emotions and what are
Mhm.
they doing for you and what are they making you feel. And you're right. You got to validate that first and foremost.
Even if it's super uncomfortable, like there's some emotions that like I don't want to have. Like sometimes I'm like, I'm judging myself for having that feeling, you know what I mean? And those are even more important to sit in and be like, it is okay to be feeling that, even if you don't want to feel like that in the future.
Right, right, exactly.
Mhm.
You're right. You gotta live in it. You gotta, experience it, live in it, and then you can move forward. But if you don't
Mhm.
allow yourself to do that, you're not allowing yourself to grow from it and move forward. So you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. But
I
that's,
mean, we're kind of talking about this already, but like, what lessons did you learn throughout this?
the lessons I learned, it's interesting because I think back, I thought, wow, what could I have done differently? Well, when I think about it, what I could have done differently, maybe, is when I think about my whole experiences in my 20 years of an abusive marriage. What I wish I had had, the lessons I wish I'd had, I wish I'd had allowed more support in my life. Like we
Mm,
talked about, having a therapist or somebody to validate and be there that you could talk to about what you're feeling and not be embarrassed, not feel like, oh God, I can't share this with anybody.
mhm.
Allowing support. I think that would have been, for me, that would have been a big change. If I'd had support in the beginning, or even the middle, I probably would have left a lot sooner than I did if I
Yeah,
had
yeah.
also the validation that what I'm feeling is okay. And then also the encouragement to be, it's okay to feel what you're feeling, but you're better than this. And have somebody like support, help me along the way to get over it. Because I
Yeah.
have a couple of friends who would have come, who I'd known all my life, and they would have, it's a difficult topic to talk about, right? I mean, people feel invasive, like, oh, you're not talking about your life, so I don't know if I want to. But I had a couple of friends I grew up with who were trying to kind of help me through it, but it was so uncomfortable for them. They didn't know how to support me, to be honest.
Yeah.
So they didn't
Yeah.
really provide the support I needed. So lesson learned would be to have support and not push people away.
Yeah, and that support can come in so many different shapes and forms, like mental support, emotional support, physical support. Like I needed financial support at that point in my life. Like I stayed for that in that relationship because he supported me financially. And that was my way to have a stable home life, you know what I mean? And so like this all goes to show, like we just need to share resources in general. Like we can't act as these silos anymore, these individualized, I think it's a late stage capitalism thing, but that's a soapbox for another time, is like because it's kind of, you have this analogy of growing up on this small island and how you had these support networks kind of built into like trust, like you said at the beginning of it, right? Like we can trust fall in those situations, in those environments, but we can't necessarily trust fall in, you know, the mainland of America and most situations that we find ourselves in current day.
Absolutely. And then once you're absolutely right. The trust fall, feeling that you have a network or a community behind you. And when you're in an abusive situation, like I just tend to push people away and I didn't allow them in.
Mm.
The friends that I did have, I, just not ended, but after a while, because you're pushing people away, they just stop coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. It takes a village. And I think having that support makes a big difference and allowing and not being ashamed. And I think a lot of times when people are having difficult relationships or abusive relationships because they've been torn down so much about not being worthy, not being a great person, and they've been just told over and over again how bad they are, that you tend not to want, you tend to be embarrassed and ashamed to even share anything with anybody else.
Yeah.
And I think, now one thing I do appreciate it that is people are more and more talking about, relationships in general, talking about how it's okay to share. It's okay to be it's okay to be in a bad relationship, but it's okay to ask for support. If people are going to understand, they're not going to judge you. Because I think the first thing you think about is everybody's going to judge me. They're going to think, what's wrong with my relationship?
Right.
What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me as a parent? I mean, all these roles that we play, we think, well, if we have a really abusive relationship, that plays into all of the roles, how we're not doing a good job as a whole. But I think more and more we have these discussions and we talk about things like this, we're making it easier for people to ask for help.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
okay to say that I don't have a great relationship. It's okay to say I need help because of it, and be more acceptance, and to have people that can help you in your life and to open up to those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking this applies to jobs as well, like your relationships with your careers, your relationships with your jobs, because those have such a foundational effect on your quality of life as well. Like it's okay to say I'm in a toxic work relationship,
Exactly. And that's funny because one of the things I'm doing is I'm doing a little pivot in my coaching program, my speaking, I'm building a speaking part of my business. And that's one of the things I want to talk about is how do you build healthy relationships in the workplace? How do
Yeah.
you build healthy relationships in a team environment? Because as you well know, a lot of people work in teams. So how do we work better in teams? Because I've heard from a lot of people, and I experience it myself in the corporate world, where it is toxic. Sometimes it can be toxic. You'll have people who, make it a difficult time to have relationships. So how do you deal with that? Most of the time people leave instead of trying to fix it because they don't think they have the support from their manager, from HR, whoever that may be. They
Yeah.
don't have that support structure built there that they can get help,
Mm-hmm.
to either change those relationships or provided with tools. What tools can I use to better my relationships with other people in
Mm-hmm.
that I work with? So you're right. It's a foundational
Yeah.
situation that
Yeah.
if you're not able to fix those relationships at work, it's really hard to fix relationships in your life as well. So
Yeah. And again, it's practice.
yes, that's
Yeah.
practice and be provided with tools, because there's so many tools out there people can take advantage of to improve their relationships, to be more open and honest, to be able to be respectful of someone else, to be accepting of someone else. I think
Yeah.
Acceptance is also a big key. How do we accept other people's their points of view or their culture or their way of living? How do we accept it and respect it and respect everyone else's? So even may not agree with somebody, it's okay to disagree.
Yeah.
If you disagree, it's okay. It doesn't mean that I don't want you as a coworker or respect you as a person. We can all come from different perspectives and bring something to the table. So
I mean, that's a perfect segue into the next question is what everyday tools or practices did you use to support yourself during these times?
Well, for me, it was journaling. And it's funny part is, even though I wrote a book, I don't like to write really well.
And yet you say journaling. Come on, there's something here.
But it's so funny because journaling is really, when I first did, I went, oh, you mean I got to write in a book? I got to write, but it's so therapeutic because you're writing when you put pen to the paper versus a computer. When you put pen to the paper, you're writing your feelings. It's like you're just releasing everything. Everything's coming out. All of these feelings that I'm dealing with, all of this anxious, anger, frustration, it's all leaving me and coming on this piece of paper. So I'm releasing these feelings and I'm allowing myself to do that, and I also do what I call a thought download. It's a similar thing to journaling. So if I'm going to do something like, for example, if I'm going to give a presentation and I'm really nervous about it, and all of these thoughts are in my head, like how I'm not good enough, people are not going to listen to me. I write all those thoughts down on a piece of paper, similar to journaling, but instead of keeping it, I usually throw it away. So just the act of writing it down and throwing it away leaves my mind and those thoughts disappear.
Yeah.
When I first did that, I thought, oh, this is really stupid. It works. It really works. I, wrote it down and I threw the piece of paper away, and instantly I started feeling those thoughts were gone. They were like truly gone. I started feeling better, and I was able to, enjoy the presentation I was doing because those thoughts were gone. So the tools I use, journaling, thought download. I also use gratitude, and I know people talk about gratitude, but there's so much to be grateful for in our lives that we don't even think about. Just little things. Getting up in the morning, I'm grateful for that. Enjoying the sunshine when it's sunny. Just the act of gratitude alone is really important. And then also just building yourself up using positive affirmations. I'm a very big component of that. I talk to the mirror every day, and when I first started doing it, I thought, oh, this is really weird. But it really does work. The more, because you start to feel what you're saying. It's almost, it really is a reversal of emotional abuse, because I went through emotional abuse in my relationship. I was told how bad I was, how ugly I was, how stupid I was. And I began to believe that because I heard it so much, right?
Yes.
The opposite of that. The positive affirmations really help to change your dynamic. So the more I kept telling myself the opposite of that, the more I started believing it. And it's funny because then I started feeling it. And I started realizing that I really do love myself. All of those hatred was gone because I replaced it with those positive things. So
I mean, we can train the brain to believe whatever we want it to believe. Like I come from neuroscience, and that's one of the things that I've always loved over the years in studying psychology and how the brain works is like confirmation bias is real. Like we all have it. It's literally wired into our brain. And so how can we use it to our benefit rather than having it be like a default setting?
Right. Exactly.
It's like, I want to train my brain to believe in certain things, and that's the intention behind those practices.
Right. And that is so powerful when you truly understand and realize you can do that. You can train your brain to think more positively. You can train yourself to, feel confident, to take on the world, that you end up doing just that. I mean, it's small increments, of course, but you end up doing that. And when you finally realize, wow, I do feel good about who I am. I do feel confident. I can push back in a good way, whereas before I would never do that. So you're right. It's just amazing how you can retrain your brain. But it's funny because when you think about when you have those, your brain is trying to always protect you in some respects. Safe, right?
Absolutely.
Whenever you think about doing something risky, well, like starting a business, like you and I have done, start a business, your brain goes, oh, don't do that. You're gonna fail. What happens if you fail? What happens if you don't make money? You go through all of these scenarios because your brain is trying to protect you, right? But then you think about, well, that's may be true, but I've got to think about myself and know that I can do this. And if I do fail, I'm going to learn from that failure and I'm going to move forward. So everything is going to be moving forward versus moving back. But it's just knowing that those thoughts are just there to protect you. But once you can eliminate those thoughts, you can also move forward and be successful and do what you need to do. So
yeah, I mean, one of the things that I do for myself is think of ways to be successful outside of the, you know, make money and be famous goal. Like, what are some success metrics that I can try to achieve that aren't like make or break just success metrics? You know what I mean? Like you said, being grateful for the little things. Like, I successfully folded my laundry today, or I successfully learned something. I successfully, you know, accomplished X, Y, and Z, because that's going to create those positive feedback loops, right?
exactly. And then also celebrating those wins too. I remember when I was first told by one of my first coaches, you should celebrate the wins. And I'm like, you mean celebrate all those little things? And she goes, yeah, you need to celebrate those little wins. And she was right, because when you start celebrating all of the little wins, they lead to something. And you look at that and you go, wow, look at all I've done. You know, then the gratefulness, the positive things come into play. But when you can celebrate it, it doesn't have to be anything a big deal, but just celebrating all of those little wins that have made you where you are today. It can be really key to move forward.
I mean, there's cumulative interest, so why can't there be cumulative positivity?
Exactly.
All right. Well, anything you want to add before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, I just want to add that, you know, I thank you so much for having this platform and allowing me to share my story. And I'm hoping, and it's always been my hope, that if I can just impact one person, if I can, you know, give some kind of, I don't know, some tool or some kind of thought that allows someone to go, wow, maybe, you know, maybe I can make a change that'll help me along the way. That's all I want to do, is just impact one person at a time. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. So I'm hoping that that's what happens. So
yeah, I'm sure the audience is going to find lots of golden nuggets in this conversation. So I'm excited for them. All right. Well, this is powerful stuff that we're talking about here. And audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts and feelings and insights and takeaways with us. Tell us how this has landed with you. We'd love to know how visions like these have impacted you in your own lives. So special thanks to Coleen for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This has been great. So thank you so much for this conversation, Claire. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So please comment, like, subscribe below, check out linktr.ee/clairjoyance for all of my links. And then where can people find out more about you?
They can find out more about me on my website, www.connectwithcoleen.com. So love to hear from you. I take that back. www.coachingwithcoleen.com. Let me give you the right, that would be helpful. That's my website, so you can learn more about what I do. And I'd love to hear from anyone who has questions, comments, or anything for that matter. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, and I'll make sure all of those links are available too in the description and notes and all of that jazz. So until next time, please remember that you all have extraordinary stories to share, and I'm rooting for you as you use them to change the world for the better. Take care, everyone.